Hey everyone, welcome back. This week we're going to go ahead and go through that ultimate classic, The Goonies. Now, if you guys haven't seen The Goonies, again, do yourself a favor and go ahead and watch this one. Now, this is mid-80s at its finest, but this one is a classic. So, again, if you don't know the Goonies story, please go do yourself and watch it. It just actually celebrated an anniversary not too long ago, too, that put it back in theaters for a bit. But with all the talk of the Goonies potentially finally getting a sequel, we'll see, knock on wood. I figured I'd talk about this one before the sequel actually happens, and who knows, because a lot of time is going to go on between the original 1985 Goonies and possibly a 2026, 27 Goonies. So let me jump into it and see what we got. So for all of us that have seen this, and I'm sure it's almost everybody at this point, I'm going through this one, and this one is, like I said, there's so much going on in this movie, and we all love it. So I was sitting there trying to not essentially pick it apart, but think about what actually happens next for these guys. I mean, I know we're gonna scan past the Goonies 2 video game that came out. We're not gonna worry about that story because that was just a video game, so we're leaving that one behind. Even though the Fratellis escaping and kidnapping the Goonies is actually not a bad idea, but it never came out in a movie. So let's jump into this one. So let's start with the ultimate Goonie. Well, so Mikey. Mikey is the ultimate Goonie, right? We all know Mikey. He's the one that started it, got everybody going, and essentially helped them all find the treasure at the end. So my big thing at the end of, or going past this, is what happens with Mikey and the Goonies, like just as a whole. Like they find this treasure, they find this legendary ship, and this this pirate. They find One-Eyed Willy's pirate ship that nobody thought actually existed. So what becomes of them post this? Like do they become rich and famous, or do because they were about to lose their house? So does all that really stop all that? Because he had this pile of gems that technically he found, so he is able to trade those in for money essentially. But it's just, okay, his parents are about to lose their house like that day. So was he actually able to pay off all that stuff and save his parents' house? I mean, I'm assuming he could, because he probably had millions of dollars worth of gems right there, and I don't know what his parents owed on taxes for the house or for that land for them to keep it. But I'm assuming the developer is going to say, sure, yeah, give me a couple $1 million and we'll call it even. But it's just mainly what happens post this for all these guys. So, like with Mikey, what happens with Mikey? Does he really not have asthma after that? He throws it away. Does he become like I'm just kind of like, what does school or like their environment in Astoria looks like for him and his friends after this? Because clearly they're going to be legends and heroes in this community, because they probably have found all this money and were able to put it in the community and kind of help them out a little bit. So, Mikey's very, very crafty and also into, I would say history. So I'm just kind of curious where he goes from this. Even in a potential sequel, jumping ahead this far off, where do we see Mikey at this point in his life? Is he kind of doing what his dad does? Is he working in a museum and some new kids come along looking for something that maybe he thought was a legend? Like, who knows on that one? So that would be interesting to see, especially in a potential sequel. And then, kind of the same thing for his buddies. You got Data, you got Mouth, Chunk. It's like, what happens with all these guys going forward? Like, especially like in school, like, because you got to think these kids are going to go back to school. I don't know if they really talk about what time of the year this is during the movie, but they got to go back to school at some point. So now that everybody's going to know who they are. They found all this treasure and all this money, and what kind of happens with them and their lifestyle, because now they're probably going to be like millionaire kids. Because I hate to assume, but I'm also assuming at some point, because we see the ship sail off, that they go and stop it. So I don't know if the Goonies technically have like finder's rights to that whole ship and everything on it, because there's still tons of gold and jewelries and everything on there that was left on the boat that them or the Fratellis didn't take. So there's still a lot of gold on that ship, and just the historical value of it, if they sell it to a museum or something, would be huge. It'd be millions of dollars for these kids. Even in the 80s, it would still be millions of dollars. So it's just what happens with with them on that aspect and going forward with life in Astoria. And then, you know, like, you got, like, you know, I don't want to say secondary. We got secondary storylines. Like, you got Brand and, what am I forgetting the name? Andy. Like, does that relationship actually take off? Do they get married? You know, because especially in a time jump, did they get married? Do they have kids? Like, who knows? Maybe his kids or Mikey's kids are adventurous, something like that. Or, you know, you could have any number of the kids that belong to any of these characters at this point. So it was like, what happens with that relationship? She had her, you know, her kind of like her, I don't know if it was an ex-boyfriend or the guy liked her, Troy. Like, what happens with all that posted? Because we see Troy kind of like at the end, you know, his dad was like the, you know, the big I owned all the property. So I wonder if that aspect flips now that these guys have essentially a lot more money than when they started, you know, finding all the treasure. And also with Troy, like, he kind of got embarrassed, you know, with the whole, you know, pipe thing. So it's just like, does he kind of become like the chump? Because he seems like he was kind of like the popular bully type character, but we don't really see them in a school setting at all. You just see, you know, them as being the Goonies. So it would just be interesting to see what that aspect of it looks like going forward too with their relationship. Steph, I think Steph is just, you know, kind of around too, like in a potential sequel. She has to be there because, you know, she did end up being a Goonie, but, you know, her and Mouth's relationship was a little weird. So it almost kind of seemed like there was a little something there, but I'm not too sure. But maybe they just ended up having that mutual relationship or that mutual respect for each other. So that would be interesting to see too. And then the Fratellis, like they're pretty good at being escape artists. So do they escape here? Do they, you know, do they actually stay in jail for a while? Obviously in the sequel, they're probably all long gone by now. I think 2 or 3 of them have actually passed on over the time frame. But yeah, that would be interesting to see what they do with that. Even if they brought them back in a sequel. A sequel could have been they go after some other type of treasure and they don't even need the Fratellis in this one. You bring in another bad guy. But another huge question mark I had was with Chunk and Sloth. You know, at the end, Chunk tells Sloth he's going to go live with me now, and I'm going to take care of you. So, to me, I'm thinking, all right, Chunk just promised this guy, this man, who we don't know how old Sloth technically is, but, you know, after all this, he comes to Mom and Dad and says, hey, this huge guy Sloth is going to come and live with us now. Like, hooray! So, I'm just like, does that actually happen? Like, do his parents allow him to bring in this guy that they don't know into their home and live with them? Now, I'm hoping yes, because we all see at the end that Sloth is actually, you know, he's very kind-hearted. Sure, he's insanely strong. We don't know too much about him other than that they had him chained to the wall because he was kind of I think he was just kind of probably a little bit to handle, but him and Chunk seem to get along very well. So I'm curious how that relationship going forward actually went, if he did live with them. Because I think in a sequel where you have, even if it was to where they were still younger and going forward, I think you bring Sloth along for the ride. You know, he's there for, you know, kind of like comical muscle. You know, something comes along that they can't handle. Sloth comes in and helps them out, and he's, you know, he can save them if they run into any other bullies. So, yeah, that was a big question mark for me, like if that actually happened with him going to live with Chunk and his family. But, yeah, this one went by fast, so again, if there's a potential sequel down the road, who knows? We'll probably see most of these guys being adult. They're all going to be in their 40s, 50s by now, if not probably a little older. And who knows what kind of storyline we would get out of that. But if you guys have any big questions about what would have happened next for these characters, please let me know. Other than that, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.